Morning, everyone. It's 8 o'clock. We'll start our meeting, call it to order, and Representative Chuck Williams will open with a prayer.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let's pause for a moment of prayer. Kind and gracious God in heaven, Lord, as we gather here in the beauty of a new day, we thank you, Lord, for all the blessings of the day that we hope you will send our way, Lord, as we sit here as stewards of the natural resources you have entrusted us with, Lord. We just ask you to give us the wisdom to be stewards of those resources, Lord, and do with those as would be your will. Lord, lead, guide, and direct us today. Be with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. So the normal request, please turn off cell phones or mute the sound. And this is a full committee meeting today. We have 2 resolutions before us. They have not gone through the subcommittee process because resolutions can actually begin in the full committee. And we have Senator William Ligon with us today, and he's got to be about the people's business on the Senate side. So, Senator, before we do ask you to do your bill, I'm going to check and see if we have anybody who has signed up. So, will you check sign-up sheets for me, Richard? Do we have anybody who's signed up? For it's Senate Resolution 730. No one. Okay. So, Senator, what we'll do is ask you to present your bill, and then the committee will have questions. And go ahead and tell us what you handed out. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I gave you a copy of the final report of the Joint Coastal Greenway Study Committee, and this was a joint House and Senate study committee that we had last year that just looked at the feasibility of establishing the coastal Greenway. And just by way of background, the Coastal Greenway is a 155-mile bike trail that runs along coastal Georgia. It's proposed, it hasn't all been built yet, it would connect our state parks and a lot of other areas that are of interest that tourists would like to see. And it's part of a larger 2,000-mile trail that will run up and down the East Coast. And some states have already built parts of it, and it's in the process of being completed. And the committee just looked at the cost, the economic viability, and the impact on the coast, all of the health benefits that come from encouraging bicycling, and just recommended that the state support this. Now, we're not asking for the state to build it, because the 24% of the trail that has already been built has been built by public-private partnerships of private individuals, companies, and local governments. And we want to encourage that, but we wanted to try to bring a little bit of structure and organization to it and encourage first the Coastal Regional Commission to take a leadership role in trying to coordinate the various agencies and local governments seeking private grants to help put this together and make it a reality and to help speed it along. We also learned that the state can help in several ways. First, the DOT is engaging in road projects along this area, and they can very easily, as a part of that project, build a section of the Greenway at a very economical cost, because they're already there, the materials are coming, they're doing the work. And so we want to encourage them to do that. We want to encourage the DNR to help and cooperate and work with securing any necessary permits that need to be obtained, because we would go through areas where there's marsh. We are on the coast, and those things need to be looked at and evaluated, and we need their help and cooperation to do that. Finally, we also are asking the General Assembly to look at this from time to time and asking the state to make a small appropriation for that, for $1 million. Now, it didn't make it in the budget this year, but we're hopeful that in years to come that we may be able to do this just to help coordinate this and help make this a reality. And the resolution is just comes out of a desire to have the recommendations of the committee reviewed and approved by the General Assembly. And so that's the reason for the resolution, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Senator. If anyone has a question, now's the time to press your buttons. All right, number 21. Say your name and
Representative Buddy Harden. And yeah, just a question. The 24 miles that's already built, has it been pretty well coordinated, or is it does it need some more work if it goes through?
It's actually 24%
Okay.
that's been built, and I don't think that it's been coordinated. I think it's it's like patchwork, and if we could coordinate it and maybe start in one end and start building it in phases. And one of the things that the report does is recommends, look, let's build this in phases. We'll start in St. Mary's and work our way north, and that would connect Jekyll Island with some other areas. And there are wonderful bike trails on Jekyll Island, and people like to go there to ride. And if we can connect that, it would be nice. So.
Yeah, I have enjoyed the ones on Jekyll Island, and I'd like to see it coordinated so that it all fits together well.
Yes,
and thank you for the resolution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Number 24, state your name and then your question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Chuck Williams. Senator, thank you for bringing this forward. I got a question for you, and I just scanned the summary sheet and didn't see it. Will you address the issue of the real estate where this is being built and will be built, as far as ownership, whether the greenway itself would own the underlying real estate, whether it's easements, whether there's any eminent domain, private property issues that are having to be dealt with here?
Right. It's been built by a common. I don't know that we have any structure for ownership other than the local jurisdictions. It is possible for the state to own some of the right-of-way because it will be built in state right-of-way in some areas. So I think you may see a combination of things. I know there's a section that runs through Camden County where there was an old abandoned railroad right-of-way that's been used, and it's just a beautiful trail that goes through the city of Woodbine. The city of Woodbine has invested a lot in that, in building their portion of the trail through that city. It just needs a little coordination, and you could see a variety of owners of the property in that regard. So,
thank you.
Our next question is number 25.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff Jones. Thank you, Senator Ligon. Could you address a little bit the studies that show the tremendous and positive economic impact that trails like this have through the communities in which they travel?
Sure. Well, during our hearings, we had testimony of how trails in other areas of Georgia and the country have had a significant economic impact. And one of the examples that we had, I believe it's the Silver Comet Trail around the Atlanta area. And there was a lot of this discussion of how this, if you own property next to the trail, your values went up because people want to live near these trails so that they can exercise and recreate. And it's good for communities. There was some indications, and this is in your report, that it would, looking at annual revenue of about $7.7 million, 115 jobs. And so a lot of this comes from the tourism industry, where you have hotels and restaurants that locate along the trail, and your bike shops, so that tourists that travel the trail, they can stop and eat lunch or spend the night, and that's what it's doing. It's really, in terms of economic development, it is a complement to what we have in coastal Georgia with a tremendous amount of tourism. And it's flat there. There are no hills to ride those bicycles. So.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. And our last question, number 29.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Randy Nix. Could you tell a little bit more about what you would envision DOT's part to be? Would this be bike lanes on existing roads, or roads built, or how would DOT interact with this?
Well, what they do, and which they've already started doing, is they identify their projects, and then they would actually could build a part of the coastal greenway along the side of the road within the right-of-way. I don't know that you don't want it right next to the road. You want to try to have a little bit of separation from the cars. And then when they're redoing the bridges or working on the bridges, you can build that bridge so that it accommodates a bike lane as well. And cycling is a popular activity, and it's gaining popularity. And it's, from a safety standpoint, it's good to have some separation from the cars. And so they would identify the area where that should go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator, I see no further questions, so for my committee, this would be the proper time to entertain a motion.
Madam Chair, I move do pass.
All right, we have a do pass and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? One opposed. Okay, thank you. Senator, you have your bill, and the process now would be to go to rules and fill out the paperwork there.
Okay.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay. Thank you, members of the committee.
Next, we have Representative Chairman Tom McCall, House Resolution 1343. And while he's coming forward to present, do we have any people who wish to speak on this bill? We could check. So, Representative McCall. So, Representative McCall, we do have a few people who wish to speak on the bill. If you will present your bill, then we'll have questions from our committee, then we'll do the public speaking part, and then we'll go back to our committee.
Whatever
so thank you.
Say, Madam Chair.
I figured you'd say.
Thank you, ma'am. What 1343 is just a resolution that's encouraging U.S. EPA to withdraw the waters of the U.S. rule that we have discussed over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. And in a nutshell, what this would do would shift water management from the state's hands to the federal government, who don't understand what we do. And the biggest problem, if this WOTUS goes through, is that it would be one of the biggest federal land grabs in the United States history. In 2010, under the leadership of Chairman Smith, we set up a comprehensive statewide water management plan and established regional water councils, which know more about what they need in their local region than the state or the federal government ever would. Some of this resolution is really focused on agriculture, but on line 35 it talks about other industries. Those being 3 or 4 of them would be mining. I got a letter from Home Builder Association here talking about how much of a negative and gray area impact that it has on their membership when they go to build just a residence. Any other industry that needed to do anything as far as building or working outside, and it even affects DOT as far as building roads or even cleaning ditches if it was to get passed. It brings into federal rule everything from the fish pond behind my house to a dry ditch that has water in it every once in a while in my pasture. And it's the same way with anybody else that has any land that water may run across. It's being challenged in federal court. The Court of Appeals has temporarily blocked it. They saying that the Government Accountability Office, you look on 46 and 47, that EPA violated a federal law in doing this. EPD, our Attorney General, industry groups, being ag and the industries, we submitted comments to EPA before they adopted this thing. And back, I guess it was 3 years ago. I don't remember what date it was. But Chair Lady Smith, Chairman Tollison, Chairman Wilkinson, and myself held a meeting over in 341. It was standing room only in that meeting. Folks from all over the state of Georgia came. EPA's regional offices are about a block down the hill. Nobody showed up from EPA. What I remember most about that meeting is the one spokesman was a lawyer, and he was representing whoever represents EPA. his comment was, we're going to meet in a hotel room for 3 or 4 days and take into consideration all the comments that we have gotten and shred them. Now, when he tells me he's going to take into consideration and shred them, that tells me what I thought EPA was going to do anyway, which is not consider anything that anybody sent in and go ahead and continue with whatever they had decided to do. If you look on line 54, I had to look up what pernicious was. And it means, as some lawyer wrote this thing, it means exceedingly harmful or destructive. Jeremy, did you write this? No. Huh? Okay. All right. But anyway, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them. But in a nutshell, what I tell folks when we're talking about this thing is, if you go to the bathroom outside and it runs across the ground, you're going to have to get a permit next time you want to do that. So that's how bad this thing really is. So all this is doing is encouraging EPA to not penalize people for trying to take care of their yard. So anyway, if there's any questions, I'll try to answer them, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. Let me see if we have any questions here at this time. No questions. If you'll stay put, we'll have the public comments and we'll get back to you. So if anyone, let's see, who has our sheet? Take a minute for me to, if y'all will, yeah, I need to see it. We have 4 people who have signed up, and so, all right, so our first signer is Brian Toller. Second is Doug Mile. Third, Austin Hackney. Fourth, Alex Bradford. So a couple minutes each, if y'all would. And Brian, you're first.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee. And thank you, Chairman McCall, for your leadership on this very important issue. Chairman McCall has hit all the big ticket items for our concerns on this issue as well, and I appreciate the fact that it's much broader than agriculture. Many other industries have been a part of these discussions and expressed their concerns, and while much of the resolution focuses on the impacts of agriculture, it is indeed much broader. I know our Farm Bureau friends as well as our Georgia Chamber friends will have some comments about what the impact has been for their various organizations. But I would tell you, just from the Georgia Agribusiness Council, we all weighed in. Of course, we all had similar concerns. And if you go back to October of 2014, many of y'all are familiar with the Sunbelt Ag Expo down in Moultrie, Georgia. And we had a great big banner that we printed up. We were going to have down there for 3 days and have the public just come by, and for those that wanted to sign to show their opposition to the Waters of the U.S. regulations that were being proposed, they could just sign their name. We're going to use it like a petition and send to EPA. So we thought over 3 days we might fill it up. We did it in 6 hours. They were standing in line to sign up to express their concerns for this. That's how big of a deal this is. However, EPA wouldn't take the time to walk a couple of blocks to a hearing here at our state capitol. That's very unfortunate. We have said all along that we are not opposed to changing the regulations on the Clean Water Act. There's a process to do that, and EPA took that process into account. They had legislation drafted for a couple of years, and they couldn't get it to move through Congress because they couldn't build support. So the administration took the other approach, which is do the end run and just do the regulations without having legislative activity involved with it. And that's really what caught everyone off guard. We could challenge it with our members, the elected members of Georgia's delegation in Congress. The constituents could reach out to their elected officials. They could have their say, whether they support or don't support, or what their concerns, what their support mechanism may be. But they couldn't, EPA couldn't get that done, so they did this other route. But what's interesting is, even though EPA did the end run to do the regulatory approach, Congress took action anyway. They took action in a very loud way to show that there is not support for this action. And just for Georgia's delegation, we had 12 of our 14 members of the House voted on a resolution to repeal or to stay these regulations. And of course, both senators. I'll even say all three senators, because Senator Chambliss had supported that as well before he left office. So there's broad support for this issue. People are upset with government. We see that right now. Y'all know that. It's qualifying week. People are upset with government. This is a classic example of why. It's pure overreach. There's no way around that. People have elected officials. They want to have their say. And they're using the ballot box now to make that message clear. But this is a rule that needs to go away, and we appreciate the resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Doug Mile, next. And state who you're with. You're with, Brian was with Georgia Agribusiness. Doug, if you'll state who you're with.
Good morning, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Doug Mile, representing the Georgia Chamber of Commerce, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak to this resolution this morning. The Georgia Chamber supports this resolution and the comments made a few minutes ago by Chairman McCall. The resolution frames the issues and impacts very well. It is a timely opportunity for this legislature to send a strong signal strong message to the Environmental Protection Agency and Congress that EPA's WOTUS rule has overstepped the mark and should be withdrawn immediately. Following the publication of the rule, 22 states and numerous industry groups immediately filed suit, and that's a pretty good indication that this is a faulty rule. Georgia's Attorney General Olens leads this effort on behalf of industries and individuals across Georgia, and we thank him for his leadership. As Brian Toller said, many of Georgia's congressional delegation opposed this rule. We thank them for their commitment and encourage their continued focus on this issue. The Chamber's concerns with EPA's WOTUS rule include that EPA has exceeded its legal authority under the Clean Water Act. It can be characterised as a regulatory land grab. It captures activities currently outside the reach of the Clean Water Act. It creates great regulatory induced uncertainty. It grows regulatory costs, and it will lead to costly and time-consuming legal challenges should it ever be implemented, and with the burden of those issues falling disproportionately on farms and businesses across rural Georgia. And that's not to mention that the Government Accountability Office has claimed or found that EPA engaged in illegal lobbying activities promoting its rule, and the US Army Corps of Engineers raised serious issues relating to EPA's processes before the rule was even finalised. EPA has created a real mess, focusing on ideological outcomes rather than adhering to the regulatory boundaries clearly established by Congress. And that provides a compelling opportunity to juxtapose two very different water resource planning processes: EPA's Washington-centric approach versus a well-managed state approach focused on delivering real and lasting outcomes. And if we recall the consultative process led by our Environmental Protection Division during the development of the Comprehensive Statewide Water Plan, the 10 Regional Water Planning Councils, the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District, and the 2010 Water Stewardship Act, there was a tight focus on outcomes that would address real challenges across the state, an endeavour to ensure that all voices were heard, and a continued focus on the strength of the policy statement adopted in 2004 by this legislature, that being that Georgia manages water resources in a sustainable manner to support the state's economy, to protect public health and natural systems, and to enhance the quality of life for all citizens. This approach stands in stark contrast to EPA's efforts and illustrates that it is possible at the state level to successfully introduce long-term planning goals that advance the sustainable management of our water resources. And the Chamber, I must say, also has great confidence in our EPD to implement and manage these resources for the benefit of all in the state. Madam Chairman, in closing, I reiterate that the Georgia Chamber and its members take water resource planning and management very seriously. Water is a competitive advantage for our state that the Chamber seeks to preserve and enhance. We support this WOTUS resolution, commend the sponsors for facilitating this important discussion, and urge the committee to adopt the resolution as presented. And Madam Chair, I just would point out on line 20, 2010 should read 2008. The Comprehensive Water Plan was 2008, the Water Stewardship Act was 2010. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Austin Hackney here representing the Home Builders Association of Georgia, and just wanted to thank Chairman McCall for his Resolution 1343. He mentioned a letter that we had dropped off earlier this week, and it's a letter from our state president. His name's Neil Davis. He's a custom home builder from Noonan, Georgia, and he just wanted to say that we are one of those other industries mentioned in the resolution that would be negatively affected by this rule. We represent over 3,300 member businesses across the state, and just wanted to say that the rule leaves the identification of jurisdictional waters so vague and uncertain that our members cannot determine whether and when the most basic activities undertaken on their land will be subject to the Clean Water Act's permitting requirements. With the broad definitions and expanded reach, EPA's final rule is so extreme that it will actually regulate certain roadside ditches, isolated ponds, and channels that may only flow after a heavy rainfall. And this rule will needlessly raise housing costs and add more regulatory burdens to industries already struggling in a recovering economic environment. So I just want to thank you for your recognition of the impact that these overburdensome regulations have on small businesses in Georgia, and we would encourage the committee to adopt this important resolution. Thanks.
Thank you. And our final presentation is from Alex Bradford.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee. Thank you for letting me speak on this today. I just want to commend Chairman McCall for taking on this issue, and that's so impactful to so many industries in Georgia. And we support the passage of this resolution. There's a laundry list of reasons that the EPA's WOTUS rule should be repealed. Out of the gate, the proposed rule was concerning in its intent and effects. It took what was an acceptable and manageable definition of navigable waterways and grossly broadened it to expand EPA's regulatory jurisdiction to virtually all waters, specifically including ephemeral streams and tributaries that merely have a presence of physical indicators of a bed, a bank, or ordinary high water mark. This definition of tributary would include ditches that periodically have water in it due to heavy rains that could be dry in other times of the year. And that would cause farmers and property owners to go through extensive and expensive permitting to use their land and best practices on the claim that these ditches are navigable waterways. This would prevent things like putting up a fence, applying fertilizer, insect control, building a barn, things that are common practices, and in many instances would have no effect on a ditch that may or may not have water. In response to this regulatory power grab, Farm Bureau launched a Ditch the Rule campaign, urging our citizens to vote or to voice concerns during the open comment period, which in total, Farm Bureau members here in Georgia alone submitted more than 15,000 comments, which largely went unaddressed in the final rule. This led to another issue that in and of itself ought to serve as impetus for withdrawal of the rule. The EPA actively participated in PR campaigns and publicity to garner support for their proposal that they should have remained neutral on during the comment period. As a regulatory agency, they're supposed to gain insight and input from those that are affected by the rule, and they were actively trying to gain support and encourage people to voice their support for this rule. The U.S. Government Accountability Office found that doing so violated the publicity and propaganda and anti-lobbying provisions contained in the Appropriations Act. As you know, Congress has pursued legislation to stop this rule and force its withdrawal for these reasons, among others, and both of Georgia senators, along with all but 2 congressmen, supported these measures. In addition, the state's also opposing this rule, as is evident by the current and ongoing lawsuit being pursued. And the federal judge is ordered to prevent the rule's implementation until those courts have settled this case. So I encourage you to support the efforts of our congressmen, our congressional delegation, our state, and most importantly, to protect Georgia's private property owners and farmers by passing this resolution. Thank you.
At this point, Chairman McCall, do you have any comments you want to make?
Well, one thing I want to clarify. We are talking about U.S. EPA, not Georgia EPD. Georgia EPD is, they don't like waters any more than I do. Well, they probably like it more than I do. But anyway, I just want to make that clear that we're talking about the federal government and not our EPD. And one more thing, Madam Chair, if you'll let me, I hadn't read the rule in probably longer than I should have. But somewhere in the rule it talks about what it's regulating and what you can do and what you can't do. And then there's a word other that is stuck in there in places, and who knows what other is. And that's what makes it so dangerous, because that other can be interpreted by US EPA in ways that we don't know what other means. So like I say, if it just for an example, the fish pond I was talking about behind my house, when it overflows, it runs into a creek, which runs into the river, which runs into Savannah River, which runs into the ocean. It is a tributary. Even the runoff from the fields that go into that pond becomes a tributary. And tributaries are regulated under waters of the U.S., which means that anything that pretty much lands on a piece of ground somewhere and looks like it might at one time, whether it's raining hard or not, have a reason to be contributed to a tributary is under regulation by EPA if this passes.
Thank you. One question I have for you, and it's technical, so it'd be correcting a typo. On line 20, it was pointed out that it says, whereas in 2010, the General Assembly passed the statewide water management plan. The date was actually 2008. So would you be amenable to the committee?
You and I both been here so long, we can't remember dates.
I remember that date. But thank you. And we have a couple of questions for you. The first one, 15, just identify yourself and ask your question.
Madam Chair, John Corbett. At the appropriate time, I'd like to make a motion.
Thank you. And number 21.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Chairman, I just want to thank you. Particularly, I was looking at lines 23 through 26, and that is the key, I think, to water management, because we all know we've heard agriculture, we've heard home builders, we've heard industry speaking this morning about the need for us to control our own water in different ways in different areas of this state, and I think that the regional commissions points that out clearly, and appreciate all you did to help get those established and for this resolution, and we'll go with you as strong as we can. Thank you, sir.
We have spent a lot of time and money, not we as a legislature, well, we spent a lot of money trying to get all this put together, but the local people have taken their time over the past 3 or 4 years, and they're still ongoing, to best utilize and manage the water in their particular river basin. And EPA don't even show up for a meeting 2 blocks up the hill.
Thank you. So no more questions. So that before I proceed further, the committee is in the posture of needing to correct the date on line 20, and I had a motion or an interest from Representative Corbett on making a motion. If you are so interested in doing that, then your motion would be to amend line 20 to say 2008 instead of 2010 and propose it as a committee substitute. Would you like to do that, sir?
I make a motion to pass as amended.
Okay, and amending it with 2008. Thank you. Representative Hardin expressed interest. Let's see, number 21. Second. Okay.
Second that motion, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Now we have before us an amendment, line 20, 2008 instead of 2010. So that this committee, the way we would vote on this bill now would be as a committee substitute. So at that point in time, I will call the question. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed, nay. Thank you. One observation for our committee and for Representative McCall, it is so hard to explain what it was like from 2001 until now, 2016. But in 2001, the General Assembly body passed a law actually creating the Metropolitan North Georgia Water Planning District, and it was now named the Metro Water District. It's abbreviation. But the longer process took several years, up to 2008, and the members of the Natural Resources Committee and then our citizens from all over the state participated ongoing for these 7 years, studying how we can best, as a state, be responsible for our water use, quality and quantity, and at the same time be good neighbors to those above and below us. And we reached that point in 2008. And then in 2010, we did the Water Stewardship Act. So why I'm saying this is that if we have the opportunity to do our institute, Policy Study Institute, I would like your feedback of would you like to know more of what you can do as a legislator in your district, your region of the state, because this is something most areas cannot achieve, and the state of Georgia did, and it's been reappointed. All our members now have been reappointed all over the state, and there is support and funding in the budget, and it's an ongoing process. And so let me hear from you. I think that's one area that with a turnover of over 50% since 2001 to now, it's a legacy that we need to pass on to this committee and then to our General Assembly as a whole. So I guess that's our closing prayer, I hope. I'm not sure what that was. But anyway, thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that. And to our committee members, so these bills will go now to the Rules Committee. But just stay tuned. You never know what happens this time of year, and we'll do our best to get our information out to you. So we stand adjourned. Thank you.